I'm Tiffany, and this is from Mamaw's Kitchen. This is where I get to share with you the old-fashioned recipes and skills that I learned from my Mamaw in her kitchen. Biscuits and gravy, 2 ways. That's what I've got for you today. I'm going to show you how I make homemade, from scratch biscuits, and I'm going to show you how I make sausage gravy and how I make chocolate gravy. Y'all, gravy was one of those things that stumped me for a while. I had to keep going back to Mamaw saying, show me again. Show me again, tell me again, tell me again. She was always real patient with me, and eventually I figured it out. Now it comes pretty easy, but it took a little while. Let me be the person that you can go to and say, show me again, Tiffany, show me again, tell me again. Save this video, you can go back and watch it as many times as you need. Hopefully these recipes will help you out though, and you'll be able to make you some biscuits and gravy. Maybe you already know how and you just want to see how I do it. Either way, that's what I got for you today. Let's start with our biscuits. We're going to make us some homemade biscuits. Once you learn to make biscuits homemade, you just don't ever want to go back to the store-bought ones. These are just so much better. The recipe that I'm going to show you today is pretty close to how Mamaw would have made her biscuits. I am going to use butter, just because that's what I tend to use, and Mamaw used Crisco most of the time. You can change up the fats in your biscuits, though, and see what you like. Now, I don't measure out ingredients when I make my biscuits. I've gotten used to what it looks like, the texture of it. I did go ahead and get some measurements for you so that you would have them, but I also want to encourage you, the more you do this, start really paying attention to what things look like, what they feel like, and not just relying on your measurements. So I have 2 cups of self-rising flour, and I'm going to cut in 5 tablespoons of butter. You can use any kind of fat that you want. If you wanted to do lard, Crisco, just 5 tablespoons. I'm using a pastry cutter to break that butter up into little pieces. You could also use a fork. That's what Mamaw always used. She didn't have one of these fancy pastry cutters. She just used a fork. You could even use your clean hands. They're great tools that the good Lord gave us. So I'm just breaking that butter up into small pieces. And with my flour, now you'll notice I didn't sift my flour. That's another one of those things. It's like sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Most of the time, I just don't. Busy mama, getting things done, keeping it as simple as I can. So cutting my butter into my flour, and then I'm going to add my milk. I start with about a 1/2 cup of milk. I know that it's going to need more than that, but you can always add more, right? You can't take it back out. I will show you how to fix a boo-boo though if you put too much in. So I'm starting with about a 1/2 cup of whole milk. You could use buttermilk if you wanted to make buttermilk biscuits. Mamaw always used whole milk, so that's what we're using today. I'm working that in, and you'll see it's still very crumbly. It's not coming together. The dough is not coming together, so I know I need more. Go ahead and add about another 1/4 cup. That brings us to about 3/4 cup of milk. You'll see I add in a little bit at a time until I get it where I want. About a tablespoon or so at a time. Depending on how your flour was packed when you were measuring it, if it was real light and fluffy, or if you had it packed a little tighter, that's going to impact how much liquid you need. So just keep adding a little bit at a time. I'm actually showing you this in real time so that you can see what this looks like and how it comes together. I'm not going to cut any parts out right here. I'm going to let you see the whole thing. Even with using my hand here, you can see it's still crumbly. It's not really pulling together, so I know I need more milk. And I added a little bit more than I meant to. That's okay, though. How do we fix it? We sprinkle in a little more flour. The consistency that we're looking for, you can see this here is too sticky. It's really sticking to my fingers. It's a little sloppy. It's just too wet. So we sprinkle in a little more flour, and that sloppiness starts to go away, the dough pulls together, and that's what we're looking for. Again, showing you all of this in real time so you can kind of see what it looks like, what you do if you make a little mistake, and how this dough comes together. Now I'm going to take my dough, set it off to the side, and I'm going to get my surface ready to roll these biscuits out and cut them. It's a good idea to have these staples in your pantry or in your fridge so that when you need something like bread that's really filling to add to your meal, or maybe you even need to make a meal that kind of revolves around the bread, you have it Very budget friendly. You can just go pull it out of your pantry and out of your refrigerator and make what you need. These are also pretty inexpensive ingredients when you break them down. A great way to add to your meal. All right, so I put some aluminum foil out, sprinkled a little flour on it. I patted my dough out to about a 1/2 inch thick. And now I'm cutting out my biscuits. I have this biscuit cutter that a sweet subscriber actually sent to me. But before I had that, I just used a cup. I used the cup to cut out my biscuits. I'm taking those scrap pieces. I'm going to push those back together, pat them out, and cut another biscuit out. You could roll these out right on your surface, on your countertop. But Mamaw used to always use this aluminum foil, and then she would fold it up and put it in her flour container so she could pull it out and use it again. That little piece of dough that you have there at the end, I always just hand shape that into my last little biscuit. I used to shape those when I was little. I would shape that last little piece of dough into hearts and all kinds of things. All right, I've had my oven preheating 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I had my baking sheet in the oven getting hot. And now I'm taking just a little bit of lard and melting that on my baking sheet. You could use a little butter instead if that's what you wanted. It just helps the biscuits have a nice crispy crust on the bottom. I like to put my biscuits on my baking sheet touching. That really helps them rise and get nice and fluffy. This makes 8 biscuits plus a little extra. We'll call it 9. That's what we got today. And I'm putting those in my oven, and then just to kind of compare and show you the difference, I went ahead and made just a few more biscuits, and I'm going to cook those in my cast iron skillet to show you how that turns out. So I went ahead and made another half batch, so 4 more biscuits. I'm putting those in the cast iron skillet, and then I'll put those in the oven. While those are cooking, let's make our sausage gravy. Now, like I told you, gravy was one of those things, just gravies in general, was one of those things that it took me a long time to really get. I kept having to say, Mamaw, show me again. Mamaw, show me again. And now it's one of the things that just kind of comes second nature to me. I don't have to think a whole lot about it anymore. That's what happens when you do something over and over. I have a pound of sausage, and I'm going to brown that up, and I break mine into pretty small pieces. You also want to make sure you go ahead and cook this all the way through, because once you start adding in your other ingredients, your gravy is going to come together pretty quick. So your sausage needs to go ahead and be done. Now, I didn't drain any extra grease or anything out of that sausage. I left it all in the pan, and I'm taking a 1/4 cup of flour, and I'm going to mix that in. It will soak up any extra grease that's in the pan, and it will also kind of cling to the outside of the sausage. And then we'll start adding our milk and things in to make our gravy. This flour will help it get nice and thick. 1/4 cup. That's what I have figured out works best for me. Now, you do want to go ahead and cook this off for about 45 seconds or so. If you have trouble with your gravy tasting really floury, that means you've not cooked your flour long enough. So I'm just kind of moving this around in the pan, cooking that flour a little bit, and then we'll add our milk in. And then I'm going to add in 4 cups of milk. I don't measure my milk. It's another one of those things where I've just kind of done it enough that I can see, yeah, that's the right amount. And I'm going to let this come up to a boil. I'm going to watch it really close, because once it really gets hot, it's going to get thick, and it'll get thick fast. If you're having trouble with your gravy not getting thick enough, one of the things I would suggest is, did you get it hot enough? So I bring mine up to a boil, and then I turn my heat down. But if it's ever not wanting to get thick, turn that heat back up, and it'll probably thicken for you. Now I'm also adding in a little salt and a little pepper. You can do that to your taste. Honestly, I would like a little extra pepper in there, but I want to make sure that my kids enjoy it as well. Our biscuits are going to come out of the oven. Here's a look at them. You can kind of see how they fluffed up nice, especially since they were in the pan close together and touching. It gives you a really nice fluffy biscuit. If you want more of a crust on the outside of your biscuit, just spread them apart on your baking sheet. There's those beautiful biscuits, and here is our gravy, getting nice and thick and bubbly and delicious. Now, don't forget about our biscuits that we cooked in the cast iron skillet. I'm going to show you what those look like. They are beautiful. Cast iron just does such a good job at heating things evenly. It does make a little bit of a crispier crust on the bottom of your biscuit, which I really enjoy. So there's a peek at those cast iron biscuits, our sheet pan biscuits, and that gravy. Let's put together a delicious plate of sausage gravy and biscuits. There's the inside of a biscuit for you. I'll put a couple on a plate, spoon some of this gravy over the top, and we're going to enjoy a meal that will feed our large family for a relatively low dollar amount. A lot of things that I just have on hand, and everybody will enjoy it. It doesn't even feel like a budget-friendly meal. It's just a meal that we really enjoy. All right, let's move on. I told you we were going to do gravy 2 ways in this video, so this next way that I'm going to show you is chocolate gravy. And I've even actually had a few of y'all say, hey, do you have a chocolate gravy recipe? So let me show you that today. I'm making another batch of biscuits because we're going to have our chocolate gravy over biscuits. I'm making them the exact same way. I did think I would go ahead and show you a different way that you can shape out your biscuits. So instead of patting them out on my full, cutting them out with a biscuit cutter, I'm just pinching off balls of the dough, rolling it up, and flattening it out just a little bit. This is another way that Mamaw would do biscuits sometimes if, you know, she didn't want to go through the hassle, I guess, of cutting them out, although that's really not that much of a hassle. This is just another way to do it. And sometimes I like to do it this way. I will say, and you'll notice that the outside texture of the biscuit's a little bit different when you do it this way. It's not quite as smooth and almost a little more crumbly. So if you like a biscuit that will crumble to, you know, crumble up and then put your gravy over, maybe try it this way. It's the exact same recipe. You would think it would be exactly the same, but it does change the texture a little bit. Chocolate gravy. Y'all, I love this stuff. I love chocolate in general, but this, y'all, it is so good. If you've never had chocolate gravy, please try it. I'm taking 1 stick or half a cup of butter, and I'm melting that in my skillet. I'm going to go ahead and melt that down all the way. My tip for you when it comes to making gravies like this is to either have your ingredients already measured out and ready, or at least close by, so you can get to them pretty quick, because you want to kind of add things in fairly quick, or at least just have them ready. Into my butter, I put 1/4 cup of flour and 1/4 cup of cocoa powder. Now this is going to get thick as your flour and your cocoa powder absorbs that butter. No fears, it's okay. Then I'm going to add in a cup of sugar, and as you mix that sugar through your flour, cocoa powder, and butter, it will kind of break up some of the lumps for you and mix it into the sugar. Then I'm going to put in 2 cups of milk, and when I put that milk in, I'm going to make sure that I'm whisking really well to break up all those extra lumps. And as it starts to heat up and as your sugar melts down, it will kind of help break some of those lumps up for you. That's one of the reasons why we really kind of mix that sugar in to our buttered flour and cocoa powder, is because once that sugar melts, it will help break up some of your lumps. But you do want to whisk. You want to whisk that really well as it's starting to heat up. And I have this over about medium-high heat. Once this starts to come to a boil, this particular gravy, it'll thicken pretty quick. And because it has the sugar in it, you want to be careful. You don't want to walk away from it, because it will bubble and boil over because of the sugar in it. So you want to stay pretty close, whisking, breaking up any lumps, letting that sugar melt, letting the heat do its thing to thicken your gravy. You'll also see here in just a second that I'm going to sprinkle in just a little bit of salt. Don't let gravy intimidate you. I can understand why it is a little intimidating for some people. It was for me. I tried and tried and tried to get gravy right. But the real way to get better at it is to just keep trying. Just keep doing it again. And eventually you'll start to notice those little things. Yes, a good recipe helps. But as you do this, the more you do it, you'll start to notice little things that you're like, okay, when I do that, I like how my gravy is. When I do it this way, I like how my gravy is. And the more you make it, the better it'll get. A good recipe does help though, and hopefully that's what you're finding here with me today. I feel like they're great recipes. Hopefully they help you out. All right, when this starts to bubble, when this starts to boil, it thickens quick. Almost as soon as I notice it boiling, I go ahead and turn my heat off, even pull it off of the heat. And there's our delicious, luscious chocolate gravy. And there's those biscuits. You can kind of see what I was talking about, how the texture is a little bit different than our biscuits that we rolled out and cut out. Delicious, all the same. I'm going to take a couple of biscuits, break them up, and put some of that chocolate gravy, pour some of that chocolate gravy over the top. Y'all, if I had to like pick my favorite breakfast, we'll eat this breakfast, lunch, dinner, anytime. But if somebody says, hey Tiffany, what's your favorite breakfast? This right here is what I'm probably going to say. And it's made from stuff that I usually always have on hand. Delicious, old-fashioned, southern chocolate gravy and biscuits. I hope y'all enjoyed that and enjoyed being here in the kitchen with me for a little while today, making some delicious biscuits and gravy. If you haven't subscribed, I would love to have you stick around, be a part of what we got going on around here. I love sharing my old-fashioned heart with you and home with you and showing you what we got going on in this kitchen, teaching you some skills from days gone by. Y'all get in the kitchen and make some memories with the people you love. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, y'all.